Joining us now, there live from Washington, D.C., is the former Conservative Home Secretary Suella Braverman. A very good afternoon or stroke morning for you, Suella.
It's a pretty freezing morning here in DC, so good morning from America.
Well, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I must ask you, before we talk about Donald Trump, about the Axel Rudakubana case, pleading guilty to all charges on the first day of his trial. Big concerns about what the authorities did know, what they didn't know, what they were willing to tell the public. Were we lied to? We certainly weren't told about the charges related to the production of ricin, the possession of an Al-Qaeda training manual. We were told this wasn't a terror attack, not linked at all, we're told, after these children and these adults were stabbed by this man. What do you make of him pleading guilty, and what do you make of the information that the public has been given by the authorities since that terrible, terrible day on the 29th of July last year?
Well, condolences and thoughts and prayers and love must go out to the victims' families and all those who are directly affected in Southport. This is a tragedy of unthinkable scale. But what we see now from the guilty plea is that there was an element of terrorism involved, and these were terrorist attacks. And so there are real questions to ask about how the government was communicating what they knew in the aftermath of the incident. This incident has rocked a whole community. It's rocked the nation. And if this has been exacerbated by attempts to conceal the truth from the British public in an illegitimate way, then serious questions need to be asked.
And this is the thing, because the Prime Minister himself came out and gave a statement saying, there was no terror link, even though months later we learned of those charges related to ricin and the Al-Qaeda manual. But they wouldn't have been found, months later in his home. I would find that utterly extraordinary if that were the case. How can they say there is no terror link when someone with an Al-Qaeda manual with ricin stabs children? We've seen again and again, the threats against Taylor Swift's concert in Vienna. We've seen the attack that we saw, the terror attack on the concert at the Manchester Arena. Often it is the case that it is young women, young girls who are attacked by Islamist extremists. Why would anyone think that there wasn't a terror link here?
The problem we've got in parts of our institution right now is a wholesale cowardice and fear, an institutional cowardice, as I like to call it, to confront these very uncomfortable truths about what is happening in our country. And the scale of radicalism, radicalization, extremism, Islamism within some of our communities is very high. It's very concerning. And the authorities, I'm afraid, and you can see this very well chronicled in the William Shawcross review of the Prevent scheme, are taking a very reticent, fearful approach to de-radicalise, identify the early warning signs of potential extremism. And that is something that we need to have a much bigger and profound conversation about in our country.
Yeah, and I think it all ties into, grooming gangs in that sense. It's just it's all very awkward. Oh, let's not talk about it. And again, even that first information on day one, when people were saying that the suspect was, they were complete lies. That this was an illegal migrant who'd arrived on a Channel boat and like that, and a false name. Nope, that wasn't what the case was. But then they put out, this is someone born in Cardiff. And everyone had this image. Oh, right. I mean, yeah, we all would have had an image of what they meant by that, and they knew that. Turns out he was born in Cardiff, but he was the son of Rwandan immigrants. And again, that feeling that a lot of people in the public have, that they're just being lied to all the time. The concern we had over the two-tiered justice in the wake of the Southport riots has massively turned our justice system on its head, where different communities were treated completely different by the police and by the justice system. Do you think that we need to have a reckoning on this?
Yes, this is not new. This is the scandal, actually. As I said, if you read the William Shawcross review of Prevent, he talks about how opportunities are deliberately overlooked and missed because of people's fears of being called Islamophobic or racist. He talks about a real culture of fear, because people who are professionals in the police, in our counterterrorism policing, in our frontline services dealing with these kinds of situations are actively withdrawing from doing their job because they're scared of being called racist. Yep. And we can see the tragic consequences of that fear. And unfortunately, this is a corollary effect of mass migration and a failure of a robustness within our law enforcement.
Yeah, indeed. And again, it's now been revealed that this young boy, again, missed, pictures of him, choir boy, all this, he'd actually been excluded from his secondary school at one point for a violent incident involving a hockey stick. So, I mean, does suggest that, he wasn't quite the little innocent little choir boy that had been played out in the press. Look, let's turn our attention to what you are doing today, which is, in a few hours' time, attending the inauguration events for Donald Trump entering his second term in office. He's promised, and he did so at an event last night, big rally last night. We'll play a little clip in just a moment, but promised to sign more than, between 100 and 200 probably executive orders. Very similar, of course. We saw executive orders, did we not? From every president. Joe Biden did plenty on his first day. Let's have a little listen and a watch to what Donald Trump said at the rally last night about the sort of things that he will be signing executive orders on.
We're going to stop the invasion of our borders. We're going to reclaim our wealth. We're going to unlock the liquid gold that's right under our feet, liquid gold. We're going to bring back law and order to our cities. We're going to restore patriotism to our schools, get radical left, woke ideologies the hell out of our military and out of our government. And we are going to make America great again.
I have to say, Suella Braverman, nothing there I don't like. What do you make of these promises?
Well, I was in the room yesterday.
I saw you in your MAGA hat, yes.
Yes, I've got a MAGA hat. There's a lot of great merch on sale in DC right now. And I was in the room and the atmosphere was electric. Thousands of people from all over America had travelled a long way to get there. And this was to celebrate the victory. And Donald Trump used the opportunity to set out the agenda for the future. And it's an incredibly inspiring one that we sorely need here in the UK. It's based on secure borders. He set out there that he's going to be taking rapid and significant action on the first day. He's not going to wait weeks or months. He's going to move very quickly on the southern border. In fact, as part of the rally, he put up a chart to show the numbers of illegal migrants into the country. And it is staggering that the numbers do fall, during his first presidency, and they steadily and exponentially rise under the Biden presidency. So it is a problem that has got worse categorically and emphatically under Joe Biden.
I believe they reckon something like 10 to 11 million illegal migrants arriving in America under the Biden administration for 4 years, which is quite extraordinary, isn't it? Well, it wasn't just about borders. It was net zero, wasn't it? There was tackling, the DEI madness and trans madness, recognising two genders. Yeah, because that's all there are. Drill, baby, drill. I mean, there's so much of this stuff. And, getting people, you work for a federal government, you're in the office, you're not working from home anymore. All of this stuff. I mean, this is music to a lot of, certainly my audience and my ears. Do you think there's any chance that any of this is going to rub off on the government we've now got?
I agree with you, Julia. It is music to my ears, and it's a glimmer of hope of what is possible in the West right now. I fear, speaking to Americans at that rally last night, many of them were really relieved and grateful that they've survived the last 4 years of Biden, and that their prayers have been answered, and now that there's a new chapter which is starting from America. Unfortunately, I think we're going through that same process, and a few years later, I think we've got a chapter now of 4 or 5 years of, recession, weak borders, woke takeover and weakness in our leaders. And frankly, this Labour government has got off to a very bad start in terms of their relationship with the Americans. I can't think of a worse diplomatic relationship in our history, actually, which is harmful to the UK national interest. So I wish I could say, yes, we're going to, I can bring back some of this spirit to the UK right now. We can get going with it. But I'm unfortunate. I think the reality is we've got a few more years to go.
Well, absolutely. Well, that said, I know you fought a valiant battle against a lot of the madness when you were in government, Suella Braverman, but your lot allowed this to happen over 14 years. You lot in the Tories, you're just as much to blame. I mean, Labour have put it on steroids, but I mean, you mentioned about the diplomatic relationship. I mean, it's very interesting. For the first time, this is totally unprecedented. You world leaders being invited to the inauguration, various sort of right wingers that Donald Trump likes. Although he did invite the Chinese president, who hasn't attended, which I thought was quite extraordinary. But Viktor Orban's invited, but not Keir Starmer or Emanuel Macron, which is quite interesting. Liz Truss is there, Boris Johnson, former Prime Ministers, you and others. Now, our own talkTV's Alex Phillips is invited over to various parties, having a great time out there with our MAGA hat on. In terms of, we've got a foreign secretary who called Donald Trump, KKK Nazi sympathiser, says he shouldn't even be allowed in the country. We've got a prime minister who clearly disapproves of Donald Trump, trying to make nicey, appointing Peter Mandelson, Lord Mandelson, to be our ambassador in Washington. What do you make of that decision?
Listen, I think Peter Mandelson will end up being an irrelevance. He's not, it would be great if the reports were true and Trump were going to veto it. Speaking to people here on the ground and in the Republicans, I'm not sure that's going to happen. But I think that Peter Mandelson will have zero impact in terms of promoting British interests here. He's a poor choice of ambassador. He's got a history of hostility towards the president. And ultimately, I think the president knows that there are other avenues to the UK. He's got better relationships with other politicians, and I think he knows where his bread is buttered, and it's not with this government's Labour Party.
It doesn't appear to be. And just finally, obviously one of the things that we're told we could see executive order on is tariffs. Mexico, Canadians, the biggest trading partners with America, but China, but possibly also Europe and indeed the UK. How fearful are you that we could see US tariffs on British goods, and how confident are you that we may, who knows, manage at some point to get a trade deal?
I would love a trade deal with the Americans. We have a very fulsome trading relationship, and businesses in the UK and in the US only benefit from a free trade agreement. I think the reality of tariffs is that they are leverage. And if you look at how Donald Trump used tariffs in his first presidency, he did so in a way to exercise political capital, uses political capital in his diplomatic efforts, and I think it can be very, very effective from an American point of view. I think that we need to take Donald Trump seriously. America is back, frankly, and that is a good thing for the UK overall. It's a good thing for the West, and it's a good thing for the world in terms of our global security. We have to work hard to consolidate our relationship. I'm fearful that this government will achieve very little in that respect, but it's incumbent on those of us who do have good relationships to make the most of them with the Americans.
Very much in agreement on that. Suella Braverman, a former Home Secretary, over in DC, a very cold DC, that inauguration ceremony taking place indoors.